I wish I were big. I'm Liam, this is Rob, and welcome to the Hey Guys podcast. This week, we look back at one of the most iconic movies of the 80s, one that some would have you believe is arguably in bad taste by modern standards. But I'm here to tell you, Rob admittedly might disagree, but 1988's Big, the first movie by a female director to make more than $100 million at the box office, remains as sweet and good-natured today as it did back in the 80s. Anchored by an exemplary performance from Tom Hanks and elevated via the quietly brilliant direction of Penny Marshall, Big remains a movie that is much better and much more memorable than it really has any right to be. And here's Rob to tell you that it's actually filth.
Well, therein lies the problem with your quote, right? I wish I were big. I wish I was taller.
That is the big issue with this film. Everyone goes on about the sexual politics of the film. The sexual politics really are an issue in this film. I don't think so anyway. The big issue is the wish is too vague. Like, we are looking at a potential Faustian pack monkey paw situation here. I wish I were big. He wakes up next morning, he weighs 37 stone.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, dude, you're asking for...
Or he's got a massive penis, depending on when this film was made.
Well, yeah, that would be very strange if we won't go there. But yeah, it's an incredibly vague wish to go up to a machine and say, I wish I was big. There's so much wiggle room. It's weird because you could make the argument, and I was watching this movie with my wife. She's like, well, Zoltar, is Zoltar, isn't it?
Is Zoltar, yeah.
Yeah, knows what he means. It's basically reading his mind, saying, I know what you're getting at. And really, if that's the case, he's kind of screwed him over regardless, because at that point in the film, he wants to be big enough, really, to go on the fucking roller coaster and to go out with the girl. I've got a name. But so at the start of the film, he's too young and too small to date her. And then Zoltar immediately ages him out of any chance of a relationship with this girl by making him 30 years old. So it's like, I'm not sure if he can read his mind. I think he's just lucky he ended up as 30 rather than 30 stone, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. But in regards to if this film is super filth, when I was watching it, I was thinking, maybe this film isn't as bad. Like, it's a sweet moment when they're in his apartment and they that whole I'm on top thing, and they jump on the bunk bed.
Well, by the way, just to be clear, I think me watching it this time, this is the first time I ever got that joke. You know, we talked about like there's a bunch of films you grow up with, and then suddenly you're like, oh wait, that's a sex joke. I think until yesterday, I still thought that was a joke about having bunk beds. I was still kind of seeing it from his perspective. I was like, oh, on top in terms of sex. Yeah. Oh, I see. I was like, Jesus Christ, Liam, you're 41 years old.
So you get that part, and that's still sweet, and that's fine. So I'm in my mind convinced myself that my mind is filth. And then, no, you get to the scene in her house, I'm guessing, and there's no way they didn't fuck after they kissed.
Well, it's weird because people have asked whether they slept together. And Penny Marshall states that they at least fooled around and confirms that she gets why it wouldn't fly today, but that nobody even questioned it in 1988, which I think is really interesting. And a reminder not to judge retrospectively, despite the fact that we're totally going to judge retrospectively. That's kind of the point of the podcast. You know, and it is a reminder that nobody thought this was weird in 1988. Nobody. No, not the people filming it, not us watching it. It's taken a long time for us to go, wait a minute, is this weird? But the idea that they didn't sleep together, I'm with you. Absolute cobblers. They 100% slept with each other to the point where he had the whole the day after sex dance thing. Yeah, you know, like that classic thing where you high five everyone, the sun is shining. He didn't just touch her boobs. They fucked for sure.
And it's the thing, isn't it? Because when you get to that part in high school as well, where they keep calling you a virgin, he goes, "Nah, I fucked a 30-year-old woman."
Yeah, but it's strange because yes. The point of this podcast is we stop and we think about it and we judge it retrospectively. A lot of this film, and one of the brilliant things about this film is that it steams by. Like, it's an hour and 45. I couldn't believe when it wrapped up. I was like, man, that film flew by because it's so charming and so likable. And when I wasn't thinking about it, I didn't think it was weird and I didn't think it was gross. It is one of those films that when you stop and think about it, you're like, this is a little bit strange. But I think Penny Marshall certainly was at the time that it could potentially be weird. But I think it speaks to the movie's brilliance that for the most part, I don't think it's weird. It's, you know...
Oh, and mate, it's creepy. And she dropped him off at the end, watched him change to a 13-year-old boy, and then drove herself to a mental asylum. Like...
It's right, because the end I actually think is quite sweet. Bizarrely, I thought it was going to be gross. I kind of mentally prepared myself. I was like, I'm going to go back and rewatch this, and it's going to be appalling. But like, I think the kiss on the head, the look she gives him, it's all very sweet. Again, though, I give you that out. If I stop and think about it, I'm like, she's just putting on an act. The moment he drives away, she's like, fuck, if anyone finds out about this, I'm going to goddamn prison. It's like, what have I done? That kid's 13. Like, he says he's 13, and it doesn't quite go into her head. She has a little moment out on the pier where she's just like, oh my God. But like the idea that he turns around, she sees the kid, and she's like, oh fuck, what have I done?
At that point, reality sets in. And I imagine her acting like Jim Carrey from Ace Ventura, Finkel is Ironhorn, where she just runs into the shower and just starts scrubbing herself.
But I will say this. When you're watching on screen, and again, you're not overanalyzing it, it is a bizarrely touching scene. And so much of it, I mentioned it in the intro, is down to Penny Marshall's, it's a quietly fantastic showcase of her directorial skills.
I totally agree.
It's not showy, it's just quietly brilliant. And I tell you who does loads of the heavy lifting is Howard Shore's score. Like, he worked on Lord of the Rings, The Fly, Naked Lunch. I don't know why I'm bringing it. I think I'm just bringing up Naked Lunch as a reminder that we want to cover Naked Lunch on the podcast. Lunch. But he's won like 3 Academy Awards, and he's not the only one. Like, there's a lot of talent attached to this film, but he just takes the edge off all these scenes and makes them sweet. Like, the weirdest scene probably should be when they go back to her apartment. She takes off her top, and he does have the whole moment when he's like touching her breast and stuff like that. And instead of being gross, it just feels innocent rather than weird. But again, totally with you. As soon as I stop and think about it, I'm like, that is a 13-year-old boy touching a grown woman's boobs. But in the moment, it's oddly touching, which is, again, testament to the quality of everyone involved in this film.
And flip it. Mm-hmm. If it was a 13-year-old girl in a 30-year-old's body.
Oh, dude. And a man. Everyone is getting arrested.
Yes.
For sure. Like,
Can I change the subject, though?
Well, you have to stay on that for a second. The whole gender swap thing, you simply have to, because the genie is out of the lamp, and there were so many movies, especially 4 or 5 years ago, that were the whole like, oh, let's take these movies from the 80s and gender swap them.
Yeah, you actually had this, didn't you? What was it, 13 going on 30?
Yeah.
Jennifer Garner. That's literally that's big. They're the same ages now.
That is, yeah. But they remove the sexual elements.
Oh yeah, I mean, she doesn't go. Yeah, she has. I think she has some sort of sexual assault moment though, where some guy grabs her ass and she doesn't know what's going on. But
there's always going to be something weird. But supposedly, like, we're talking about it now. Like, nobody in 2016, 17, whatever, was like, oh, dude, we should do Big with a girl instead because it's gross. But supposedly, at the time it was getting made, Penny Marshall's friend Deborah Winger, the actress, she actually tried to convince Marshall of doing the film, but with a gender swap. But Penny Marshall's like, listen, this will start being like a really dark kind of issue of Hustler if we have a 13-year-old girl having sex with a 30-year-old man. It was out of the question in 1988, and it's out of the question now. So yes, that one, you have no fears. It's not getting made.
Thank God for that. I just wanted to say, right, you said this was her directorial debut.
No, it wasn't. It was a second movie. It was the first movie that by a female director that made over 100 million. Sorry,
that's fine. Because I was going to say Jumpin' Jack Flash, obviously was.
Yeah. I had a soft spot for that film back. I haven't seen it for a long time.
No, it's been a while.
I loved is far too strong a term. I liked Jumpin' Jack Flash in the day, but when I think of Penny Marshall, like many others, I always think of A League of Their Own.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's got previous. I mean, she's fantastic director, and it showed with both Big and A League of Their Own are two of the films I would argue that I'd watched the most, like back in the 80s and early 90s. Like, those were just on repeat. And it is the question, I suppose, with Big in particular. When I was younger, obviously we rented it on video and stuff, but right through the 90s into the early 2000s, it was one of those like staples on TV, and it's kind of disappeared. And I'm not sure.
Yeah, it always used to be on a Sunday afternoon. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
But I wonder, is it just it's aged out in so much that now it's just an older film and they eventually kind of just drift away? It just happens. Or is it like, I'm not sure if we want to put on Big and pull at that thread? Because some people, if you were in a meeting room, if an executive room, whatever, and you're just like, oh, should we put Big on the TV again? It'd be very easy to talk yourself out of it, put it that way. Despite the fact that I don't think it's a gross film. I think it's a very sweet film.
To be fair,
if someone was just listing the issues, it would be easy to be like, fuck that, we're not putting Big on.
I'm going into this for comedy value sometimes because yes, it is still a sweet film. If you don't,
but you are right. You are right.
But if you don't think about it too much, it is a sweet film. But let's get away from for now anyway. Let's get away from the ick factor of this film. Start at the beginning.
Well, just one last thing. If you start at the beginning, I think the grossest thing in the film actually happens right at the start of the film, and it's when Billy refers to the teacher's tits as flowers. You absolute creep, Billy.
Yeah. Okay.
Both of us. I was sitting there on the sofa with my wife, and we were like, "Oh, did he just call in?" I think he could refer to her nipples as flowers.
As flowers, yeah.
Oh, dude, that is. If ever there was a case for actually needing the internet, it's that, because that's how dumb kids used to be.
I'm going right to the beginning, mind. Young Josh, played by David Moscow, doing that game that doesn't exist, that wizard game.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of psycho sits on a chair on his knees like that? That really, like, as a 40-year-old man who every time I stand up, my knees crack.
Yeah, it's
really hated the way he sat.
I mean, in fairness, Tom Hanks, I was wondering, like, what came first? Was it he? Because obviously there were, like, numerous scenes where they got Josh, the younger actor, that is, to act out the scene, or just kind of set him loose in the toy store.
It was pretty much all the scenes, I believe.
Yeah. Well, that's Tom Hanks does it, like, in his first day at the office. He sits the same way. And as a 41-year-old man, I'm just like, oh, that is very upsetting. There's no way. If you go to Japan, I was like, we went for like a traditional breakfast, and they put me in like the kimono and stuff. And they were just like, I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to have a traditional Japanese breakfast. And of course, I go in, and the table is basically on the floor.
Did they have a kimono big enough for you, mind? I mean, you're 13 foot tall. They must have looked at you and went, Jesus, Godzilla.
Well, famously, when we got to the what is it? It was in Takayama. I forgot what they're called. Ryokan, they're called. Where you go and you sleep on the floor, and it's very traditional. And they looked at me and they went, "Oh, jumbo." That was the only word they seemed to know in English, was jumbo. And even then, it was just up over my thigh. So when I'm trying to sit on the floor, combined with a very small kimono, as you can imagine, it was quite revealing.
I'm for some reason in my mind, putting a kimono on is the same as putting a kilt on, right? For some reason in my mind, you've got no boxes on at this point, so you put your kimono on, swinging, and your one-eyed snake is just dangling out of the bottom. I don't know why.
Wouldn't that be a sight for everyone there? As I struggle to sit on the floor, I'm sure for some people it's absolutely fine. I just like that whole thing when you're supposed to sit on your knees with your feet underneath you.
Yeah.
Oh, it's absolutely crippling. Cannot do it. Absolutely.
It takes a long time to get back to normal after that.
Yeah. Well, the other issue with, Josh, is the fact that, the whole point of this film is that he's supposed to age up to this 30-year-old man. Josh, as a kid, has the face of a 47-year-old accountant.
Yeah.
He just looks like a fucking middle-aged man already, just dressed as a kid.
And what about, right, after the end of the film, after life goes on, in 20 years' time or 17 years' time, Josh grows up. Does his mum not go, wow, he does look like his kidnapper?
Yeah, you probably would, wouldn't you, I suppose? Yeah. At least it was the 80s, so you weren't taking photos, which is an issue you run all the way through this. Like, early in the film, there's a sequence which is about 20 minutes long, which if you made the film today would just disappear, because it's basically investigation work, which would now be solved by Google. Like, you would just Google everything and be like, okay, that like, it's so strange. And I'm not sure if it's something that happened in the 80s. The weirdest thing that actually happens is when Tom Hanks, as older Josh, goes for a job interview, and they ask for his CV to be filled out when he's waiting to be interviewed. I was just like, is this what they did? I mean, nowadays you would never get away with it because it's all electronic. You would never get paid, but obviously back in the day you could get a check. So that
job interview I loved as well. I just wrote down the 80s. I do computers. You're hired. Like, there was there was nothing else about it. You know computers? Yeah, I know computers. Good. Nobody else does.
This film is actually quite upsetting in that regard, because it is a completely unrealistic interpretation of the job market. Like, how much is he earning in his new role? Almost immediately. Like, even
so, are they getting paid weekly? Because he's on $181 or $182. So
187, I think it was. Yeah. But I assume weekly on. Yeah, I assume
that can't be monthly.
No, it'd be weekly. And that's the thing. He loses his shit, but those scenes are totally relatable, because my first job, I was getting paid £2.50 an hour to work at QuickSave, and I got £5 bonus for working on Sunday. So a part-time job, working at 16, I got £35 a week after tax. And to me, I remember getting that first paycheck, I was over the goddamn moon with 35 because I was used to like £2 a week pocket money, and then all of a sudden I had £35. Like because of course you're living at home. I didn't drink at that time, so I was just like, wait, I can just buy a fucking video game. So yeah, I totally get why $187 he would lose his shit, but he's earning $187 for like a week. Within like a week later, Robert Loggia has got him sitting at the top desk earning the big bucks. Like, I don't know who's working for a fucking toy company who, all these people like Paul, for instance, he's got an amazing apartment in the center of New York, right in the center of Manhattan. And then all of a sudden it's like, like Tom Hanks is just living in this huge apartment in central New York, buying whatever the fuck he wants. And by the way, he basically is, as a 13-year-old boy trapped in a 30-year-old man's body, is buying stuff for that apartment and spending the kind of money I would spend if I wasn't married.
Yeah, although to be fair, I would have had a bigger bed.
I would have had a bigger bed.
Like those bunk beds even they looked small for bunk beds. Can we go back to Paul? Yeah, I love the office, not the office, the meeting that they're having when they're having the transformer that becomes a building, right? And Josh, as again, a 13-year-old mind, we would all be saying it as well. I don't get it. I don't get it. But when he's asking Paul and Paul is giving him all the papers, he's basically in corporate speak just saying, kids are stupid. They'll buy what we want. I like that because that is basically the kind of thing that would happen. We are buying toys that make no sense.
Yeah. It's just like you'll buy any old crap. But in fairness, though, Josh's response to that is pretty sneaky because this film was in 1988 and his response is, it should be a robot that turns into a bug. What he is describing is an insectoid. Insectoid? Is that what they're called? Insectoids from Transformers.
Yeah.
And they were introduced in 1985. So, they're already on the market. He's already seen it on the shelf. And I was like, Josh is a genius. He's just ripping off ideas from an already existing toy. Sure, the bugs turning into robots is definitely a better idea than the robot turning into a building or vice versa. But it already exists. So I'm not having that. But hey, nobody there seems to be paying attention. It was the 80s.
Do you know when Josh is in the toy store and he's got the laser gun?
Oh, yeah.
Did you? I had them. Me and my brother had them, right?
I got asked a question. What the hell happened to laser tag? Like, it's so cool. Like you would look at it and go, well, that's the technology in 1988. If you had told me as a kid, like, what do you reckon laser tag is going to be like in 2023? You'd be like, it's going to be fucking amazing. No, it just doesn't really exist.
Ask Dave because he's got the upgraded versions of those toys for him and Amelia. And me and Dave have been playing around the house with them.
Are they any good now?
They're good, yeah. They're quite good, and you can change so you can have like full auto or semi-fire and things.
I thought maybe like the technology, it kind of like
So it's just the guns. Then you don't have the things. But me and my brother had them, right? We had the same ones: the red, the green, the chest plate, everything, running around the house playing them. And it made me think. I remember when we were playing once. Me and my brother's 3 years older than me, and I beat him. First time ever I beat him at this game. So I'm happy, as you can imagine. My older brother's not. So he introduced a new rule into the game, and he pistol whipped me.
That is a very different game. I mean, that is classic Big Brother 80s, 90s material, where it's just like, I'm just going to beat the shit out of you and say, I'm so glad I'm not a younger brother.
This is the same as...
From what I hear, I'm a much nicer older brother than yours was. Oh, yours is, sorry.
This is the same brother that introduced Brick Wars.
Yeah. Jesus Christ, man. I mean... It sounds like you had a relatively disturbing childhood at times.
Hey, I turned up for fine, so it's not...
Yeah. It's no problem. Those constant hits to the head had no impact whatsoever.
None whatsoever. Did you... I thought that was a sweet meeting as well, in the toy store, between Robert Loggia, however you want to say his name.
It's Robert Loggia, I think.
Loggia, is it? Macmillan. We'll call him Macmillan. Between Josh and Macmillan, because... He's just trying to remember his toy store. He comes down here every week. And he meets the guy that ran into him because there's nothing wrong with a bit of hustle. And he sees a child's innocence in his eyes. And he thinks, but because he's a child. And I just thought that was such a sweet meeting. He took him under his wing. He's just... Yeah.
Well, it's one of the things, again, that elevates this film. Like, there were 5 age swap movies in the space of 12 months from, like, 87 going into 89, basically. And most of them are exactly what you'd expect. Make no mistake, this is the Alien of age swap comedies. Because the comedies, it doesn't get talked about in the same way. But in the same way, something like... Sorry, I'm explaining my point here, which always feels a little bit lame. But in the same way that Alien elevated the B movie, there's loads of aliens like on a ship movie, but there's only one Alien movie. This very much is that movie, but to age swap comedies. Most of them you just forget about and you move on. This is just so much better made. And a big part of that is just having a bunch of low-key, memorable sequences. Like, what makes the piano key sequence just so memorable and lovely? And I think an important part, to get back to your point, is that Robert Loggia is in it as well. I think if it's just Tom Hanks, it's not nearly as memorable. But because you've got the older guy with what looks like a 30-year-old man, but as we all know is a 13-year-old kid, it just makes it a much more charming sequence. And it's the same with why Susan jumping on a trampoline. Why is that so adorable? Although we spent the entire sequence trying to guess if we could get away with having the same trampoline in our flat, if I could jump on it and not put my head through the ceiling. So I'm actually of the mindset that we might be able to get away with it, because I live in a tenement and the ceiling's like 12 foot high. So I think I might just get away with it. But
you're not.
I think I might.
No, you're not.
Dude, I had to go on like a 6-foot ladder to the top step and put my hands up just to reach the ceiling with my hands, not my head.
I mean, to be fair, I haven't seen the ceilings in your flat, so
honestly, like tenement buildings in Edinburgh, the ceilings are ridiculous. Sorry. Besides the point, I'm not getting an indoor trampoline. It would be ridiculous. But the trampoline sequence, obviously the piano key sequence, and the scene that always jumps out to me is, and tonally very different, is Josh's first night at the St. John's Hotel.
Yeah,
which I think perfectly captures what it would be like to be a kid and suddenly be thrown into the situation. Just how upset and scared he is, and again, to bring it, like a big part of that, not only is the direction, it's Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is fantastic in this film, and this movie, make no mistake, as good as it is, does not work if you don't buy into Tom Hanks as a kid. And for the most part, I do. There are moments when he's borderline playing an idiot savant rather than 13-year-old boy. Yeah. There are moments where I'm just like, I could maybe rein it in a little.
But he does have that childlike innocence, most of it. Like,
he does.
You do see it, and he does so well. And it's interesting, isn't it, as well? Because you see the subtle hints at two different lives of a child. Mm-hmm. You see Josh as well, with his loving family and stuff like that. But you never see Billy's family, or the fact Billy doesn't have to be until 10, which is okay. But he can just go to New York City whenever he wants, apparently, and his parents don't care. Like,
well, that's the 80s, though, wasn't it? Like that was one of the big things. If it was the summer and I was 13, it's like, obviously it's hard for I think younger people to imagine now, but we were like the last generation to not have, and I'm not talking about like internet phones, of mobile phones. I grew up, and you probably would have been the same. I went all the way through high school. Nobody had a mobile phone. So when you left the house, you were fucking gone. So it wasn't a matter of, were you allowed to New York? You could just go to New York. If I could get back home by the time the sun went down, I could go wherever the fuck I wanted.
So our curfew, as you would say, is the streetlights. When the streetlights came on, you had to be home. Mm-hmm. And the only way you would tell your mum is the letterbox. Because you don't want to keep knocking, because you don't have a key at that age, either. You don't want to keep knocking the door because your mum will be pissed off. So you open a letterbox. Mum, I'm going to the park. You go to the park for 10 minutes. All of a sudden, I'm 10 miles somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know? And then, fucking home.
Yeah, it was that whole, once you were out, you were just out. So they obviously lived in New York, but it was the difference between that and going to Manhattan. But he could have just gotten a subway, gone to Manhattan, and then gone back home. And the point is, as long as he could get back by a certain time. And he clearly wasn't from like the depth, because he lived just across.
He lived next door.
Was it next door? Next door, yeah. And I like the fact, at least, like, they weren't rich. Like, they were just like a working class family. Sometimes I was just like, she could do with I know she's got a kid, but she could do with clean up that kitchen a bit. I did get a little bit judgmental with that house a few times. It was like,
well, she was hoovering when the kidnapper came in, mind.
Yeah, I don't think she's done a good enough job, mate.
What I wanted to say as well about growing up in the 80s was, we even took sweets off strangers. Like, you would be playing in the park or over some random thing, and some random person come out of their house going, would you like a Kit Kat? Yeah, okay, we'll have a Kit Kat. It's fine.
I think that, again, like Brick Wars and laser whipping, or whatever the fuck it was, I think that might be exclusive to you, dude. I don't think old men ever just gave me.
I didn't say an old man. I said old.
It was an old. Everyone was old, though.
No, it was an old lady. The one I remember in my head was an old lady.
Yeah, it's probably a dude dressed as an old
Yeah.
lady trying to. I'm sure you were a stunning 12-year-old, mate. You know.
I was a husky little boy. I wasn't running far, was I?
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Right. One thing I'll say about this film as well. Right. Make no mistake. The most 80s thing in this film is what would you call it? The event space. You know, when they go to like the party for the company.
Oh, like the ball thing they had.
Yeah. And he like not only is his suit ludicrous. Again, that bit where kind of it blurs the line between I'm a kid and I'm an absolute moron. I don't even think a kid would dress in that suit, to be honest. You know, he knows the situation. He's not a moron. But that whole event space with all like the pink lights and stuff is so aggressively, wonderfully 80s.
Yeah.
And I was like totally enamored by that sequence. And then I got very upset. I mentioned earlier the fact that this film gives a false representation of the job market to kids. It also gives an incredibly false representation of dating. Because if you were talking to a girl and you ate caviar in front of her and acted the way Tom Hanks does in that sequence, why did she see that and immediately go, I'm going to fuck him?
Yeah.
Because that's what she does. Like
before that, did anyone watch him? Like, he's never seen baby corn before, obviously. So he just thinks it's like a tiny corn on the cob.
Yeah,
so he eats it like a tiny... So anyone watch this absolute psycho eat baby corn?
If you saw that, nobody is looking at him. Like you said, the way he eats baby corn and very much the way he kind of reacts to caviar and thinks, oh yeah, I'm gonna take this guy to bed.
Because it's funny, right?
Strange.
I always thought the way he acted growing up, again, like you didn't get the I'm on top thing. I always thought it was spicy.
I guess. I mean, growing up, I didn't know what the hell caviar tastes like. Beluga, yeah.
So I always thought it was spicy.
I totally get it. And you know, we mentioned before, like there were certain food groups. The one I brought up a bunch of times was Twinkies in Ghostbusters. I'd never seen a Twinkie before. I see it in Ghostbusters, and there was no way to find out what it tasted like, or you know what was inside it. And I had to wait a long time until I was much older to finally have a Twinkie and ultimately be disappointed with it. This was another one of those films when he's eating Oreos. I'm like, what are those biscuits? And he's like rubbing the inside. He like basically creates a double stuffed Oreo kind of, you know, himself. But for the longest time, I was like, God damn, what are Oreos? I'm glad to say at least Oreos didn't disappoint in the same way Twinkies did. They're actually pretty good. So there is some, you know, positive to take from this film. Oreos are nice.
I'm trying to think if I've ever eaten an Oreo.
Really? Yeah, I was wondering, like, were you thinking about what to say next? Because you had a quite
concern. No, I'm trying to think if I've ever eaten an Oreo. I'm not too sure if I have.
Dude, you got to try Oreos. Oreos are great. And one of the few things, like Americans often have them with milk. And I was like, biscuits with milk, Oreos with milk are absolutely dope. So try it that way.
Oh, well, I mean, I love a biscuit with milk. I'm a chocolate malted milk fan. So
a chocolate, that is very American.
Yeah, chocolate.
Very American indeed.
Hey, going on to Billy, right? Jared Rushton. So this is the second film we've done of him, but I think
I only know him from this and
Honey,
yeah.
We're gonna do 2 more of his films over time, I think.
Does he have 2 more? Jesus Christ.
He does. So he's got quite a few films, but like DVD, like straight to TV stuff, whatever. But the 4 big ones are the ones we're going to end up covering. So we will do Overboard at one point. He's one of the kids.
Oh, Shay's in that, yeah. I do like Overboard.
And we're definitely going to do Pet Sematary 2, which I prefer over the original Pet Sematary.
Jesus Christ. Are we really going to do Pet Sematary 2?
Yeah. I love Pet Sematary 2.
Is that the one with, what's
Edward
the name? Oh my God. I can't say, I've never actually seen the original Pet Sematary. I've read the book and I've watched the remake, but, he's going to sneeze. Is he going to sneeze? Oh, he saved it. Good job.
I muted myself.
Of all the films, unbelievable. What was I going to say? I was going to mention, I had to ask about the whole, what is the deal with Paul and Susan? Because there are like a bunch of scenes in that film which suggest like they're almost together, but in like an open relationship.
So I don't know. I think they were just, I mean, to be as crass as, I think they were fucking. She had a key, or he had a key to her place. I think it was just one of those things where we're too busy. Maybe if we partnered up, we could get better. We could go further in the company. So,
well, yeah, because it's the whole thing where when she takes her key back, Paul is basically suggesting that Susan slept her way to the top. And there's a really odd reference where she says, because he says like a bunch of names. Oh, what about him? Basically,
I can't believe you brought up,
I can't believe you brought up Golding. And then it's never explained. It's never gone back to. Who the hell is Golding?
Fuck knows.
That must be on the cutting room floor. It's just strange that they kept that in there and didn't kind of cut around it. But obviously, there must be an additional scene, and just they've decided, nobody's going to ask the question unless we're talking 30 years later, whatever it is, and they're talking about it on a podcast and overthinking it. But yeah, she was just like, I can't believe you brought up Golding. I was like, who's Golding? Or maybe they explain it. Nope, they never go back to it. It's very strange. But yeah, the whole Paul Susan dynamic is quite bizarre. But I get it. It's like, as much, you could say, what is this film about? Is it about like a love of youth? Is it an attack on corporate culture? That bit really is, I guess it's a combination of two. It's just that idea of Paul and Susan. This is what you become when you grow up, this gross corporate pig. And it's like, that's why she would be, actually attracted to a 13-year-old boy, or at least the concept of one.
It's funny as well, isn't it? Because growing up as a kid with the toys and stuff, you never picture the people behind giving you toys or making your toys are these people. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see that side of it. The corporate horribleness of it all. Yeah,
but it's weird because it's quite pleasant at the top. It's almost like the opposite of what's his name in Elf. He's got to learn to actually enjoy
James Caan.
James Caan, like he's the opposite of Robert Loggia. Robert Loggia is like, everyone's kind of gross in that corporate world and everyone's wearing grey suits and stuff. But you've got this one sweet character at the top of it who seems to know, what it means to be a kid, but is kind of losing kind of the, his grasp of that because of the corporate culture that's being built around him, or that's inevitably kind of being created to build up this company. And it's obviously Josh who kind of brings that kind of childlike nature back into it. But which again is all very sweet, and it's easy to forget again in those moments just how good Tom Hanks is. And I think in many respects, like Tom Hanks was actually nominated for Best Actor Oscar for this role. And then you watch it and like, yeah, I totally get it. And I think this was his kind of like, in many respects, his stepping stone onto greater things, because up until this point, he'd been known for comedy, obviously. But all of those comedies were pretty broad for the most part. And if you watch this film, yes, it's a comedy, but it's very much a dramatic comedy for a lot of the film. And I think this was like the movie, especially with the Oscar nomination, where it's like, I think maybe there's more to this Tom Hanks guy than anything else. And obviously, by 1993 was his big, I don't want to say breakout year, because he'd already been around for so long, but he went from comedic leading man to everyday triple A-lister in 1993 when he released Philadelphia and Sleepless in Seattle. And I wonder if those movie roles would have come about if he hadn't been in big beforehand. Because this is, even though it's only a year, removed, from a performance perspective, it's actually quite a big step away from the likes of Dragnet,
Well, Dragnet was the year before, wasn't it? And then and what was it? The Money Pit as well. So, and then Bachelor Party and Splash and things like that. So yeah, I think this is the thing that launched him into doing a lot of films. Then, like, fucking hell, 89 he did Burbs and Turner and Hooch. 90 he did Joe versus the Volcano, Bonfire of the Vanities.
Like, those are still kind of like, at that point, I would say classic Tom Hanks. But I still think there's something about this role in particular, which stands out from that. As I say, like, it's easy to kind of, when you look back at a big and go, oh, it's a comedy, but it's funny in parts, but it is also a drama. And I think, it asked him to do a lot more than he would have done in the past from, a performance perspective. And I think, again, this is the film where a lot of people will look at it and go, I think Tom Hanks can do more than what he's doing. And as I say, it still took a couple of years until, he really hit big in 93. And then from 93 until 2000 something, he's on one of the all-time runs,
I wanted to mention, right, you've said a few times, I've said it as well, this film is sweet. Mm-hmm. But if you look at it, sexual assault aside,
it's not assault.
All right, statutory rape.
Well, right, put it this way: at the end of the film, who's done anything wrong? Because Susan, right, there is no fucking way in a million years she could ever go, oh, maybe this is a 13-year-old boy. She's just having sex with a sweet-natured 30-year-old man.
I guess in the eyes of the law, it's statutory rape.
Yeah, but that's the thing. In the law, she's absolutely scot-free, because who's going to go up to her and go, oh, well, he's actually, like, you would have to go to court and convince a jury of your peers that magic exists. That would be the core part of the...
So she'd end up in a mental asylum.
Well, no, because everyone would be like, well, she just slept with a 30-year-old man. Well, she's not going to throw herself in the, like, she's not kind of putting herself on the stand.
I'm trying not to cover the section. I'm trying to go back to really how dark this film is.
Mm-hmm.
Although in my note, I did put about fucking. Whilst he's in New York fucking an older woman, his mum is home having a breakdown because her son has been kidnapped for a month.
That is actually the darkest part of this film.
Yes.
Like, you remove all that. Like there's another film running parallel with this where the mother is having a mental breakdown because her son has been abducted. His best friend next door doesn't seem to give a shit. And, a random, like she's seen the man who kidnapped the son. It's like a man who kind of looked like my son, but 30, kidnapped my son. He's taken him to New York and he's saying everything's fine, but I don't fucking believe him. It would be a horrendous 90-minute movie of mum having an absolute mental breakdown, having a bunch of interviews with the cops like, we haven't got anything. It's like he just disappeared. We haven't got anything. We've got no prints. We've got nothing.
But also, even in the 80s, couldn't you trace the letter back via the post office?
I don't know if you just put a stamp on it.
He's writing, I don't know.
No, yeah, if you just wrote a stamp, unless they were like matching the handwriting, but they would have nothing on file. They're not getting any prints.
No, but you can find out where it came from, couldn't you, with the sorting office and things? So at least you've narrowed it down.
Yeah, into New York. Yeah, you could say, oh, well, it was in Manhattan. It's like, yeah, good luck with that. I guess the big thing is that she has seen what he looks like, and she's like, okay, that's Tom Hanks. I know it's not Tom Hanks, but you know what I mean. She's got a good look at the man who supposedly abducted her son. He doesn't go far. He just goes from, I don't think they're even upstate New York. They're just maybe New Jersey.
Well, it's enough time for Billy to get back by 10 o'clock. So,
yeah, so, okay, we'll say, go on the assumption that they live in New Jersey, has that kind of look for it. He's literally just gone over the bridge into Manhattan. He's got a job, but he's just swanning about town. You would think that people would be looking into this. She would have given descriptions of what he looks like. They'd have the drawings and everything. He's got relatively distinct features. She had a clean look at him, and he's just going about the center of Manhattan. He's going to baseball games. I mean, fair play. He is living his best life, by the way. Again, it goes back to that apartment. I look at the apartment. He's got like Thundercat bed covers. Yeah. He's got a Godzilla toy. He's got like loads of baseball memorabilia. They're going to New York to see the New York Yankees. I'm like, this is all what I would do.
He's got toys in his office. He's got a woman that brings him Yoo-Hoo and gets all the commercials cut out of NFL games.
Dude, it literally sounds like what I would do.
And all the while, his mother is at home talking to a sketch artist going, oh, well, he's got hair kind of like my son, and his eyes are blue like my son, and his chin is pronounced like my son,
and someone would say, so basically it looks like an older version of your son. It's like, oh, actually no, my son actually looks 47, so he looks like a slightly younger but slightly taller version of my son. That's what we're looking for.
If you put my son in a suit, he looks like a 47-year-old accountant.
Yeah, 100% he does. Yeah, that kid just fucking... Sorry, I apologise to the actor David Moscow that we're basically just tearing him up for looking for... In fairness, he looks very much the same now, admittedly, so we'll give him that.
Yeah, minus like the child freckles and things like that. He basically just looks the same now.
Well, sometimes, right, you obviously have to go through a spell of where you look old, for instance, but it's like we always said, like Steve Martin's the perfect example. Steve Martin looked 55 years old when he was 35. But now when he's 75, he largely looks the fucking same. So he kind of he looked old for a long time, but now he kind of looks oddly young because he looks the same as he did when he was 40. Bizarre. So he's just got to play the long game, that's all. But yeah, I would say towards the end of this film, when you suddenly get this idea of like Tom Hanks realizing he's lost the run of himself and, he needs to go, like, you realize that this film really is the crime of forgetting your friends, and in particular, forgetting your friends for skirt. That's what this reminded me of. Everyone goes through a period where you start turning 16, 17, people start getting girlfriends, and there's always that one or two friends who just like forget their friends completely and just absolutely, like, all they do is spend all their time with their girlfriends. You're like, oh, you're not coming for a beer? Oh, I'm with my girlfriend. Like, dude, you're such a fucking pussy. There was always one or two who just completely rolled over for their new girlfriend. Like, they were so enamored with the fact that they were getting skirt that they just forgot all their friends.
I love you calling it skirt. Like, oh my God.
And by the way, if one of my friends is listening to this and he thinks I'm talking about him, I'm totally talking about him, by the way.
Anyway, it's terrible as well, isn't it? Because Billy... is a 13-year-old boy. He's come all the way from wherever he is on the bus to New York City to go to to use, I'm guessing, his pocket money to pay for a meal for Josh's birthday. And Josh has gone, thanks for that. I'll let you go home on your own.
Shite bag. He does turn into a shite bag at the end of the film, but it is brief, admittedly. But then the end is actually quite rushed. I mean, I mentioned the fact, I don't see that necessarily as a negative because, as I said, this movie really goes along at like a really decent clip, and it's never boring, and all of a sudden it's just ending. Like, my God, it's just kind of come and gone. But like, when he suddenly decides, oh, I want to be a kid again, it really, like, the finish line is coming up real quick. And it's almost like they don't know how to deal with Susan. Because Susan, like, her first reaction is perfect. She's like, oh, you're obviously married. You're just trying to find some ridiculous excuse to leave me. But when they're in that boardroom and he's talking about the comic book and they're like, oh, this is like, from the mind of a child. She suddenly and very abruptly comes to the mindset. It's like, oh yeah, he is actually a 13-year-old boy. Like she's all in on it because of one line in a corporate. I thought she would have had to, maybe she would be spying on him. She follows him to Zoltar and then they have a conversation. But instead, she sees that one moment in the boardroom. I don't know exactly what she hears that suddenly convinces her that, yes, magic exists and I've been fucking a 13-year-old boy. It's quite bizarre, very abrupt. But yeah, I guess it's one of those things you don't want to overthink at that point in the film. Like, let's just kind of get it moving very quickly. Let's just make it as sweet as we possibly can to kind of cover up the fact that it's super weird at this point.
It's when she has that breakdown as well again, isn't it? Where she's like, oh, Annie was the best sex of my life.
Well, I tell you, a really important decision they made. I think I may have mentioned it earlier, but it's worth kind of bringing up again. That in the script, originally, that scene in the car, she was supposed to kiss him on the lips. And I don't mean as a kid. I mean, she knows at that point that Tom Hanks, or at least suspects that he's a kid. And he goes to kiss her on the lips, and she actually grabs his face and very sweetly kisses him on the forehead. And I think it's one of the most important aspects that makes that scene work. In the script, they were supposed to kiss. And I couldn't remember exactly what happened. And as he goes to kiss, I was like, oh, no, don't fucking kiss him. Don't kiss. And she doesn't. She kisses him on the head, and it makes him much more adorable. But yeah, in the script, they were supposed to kiss on the lips, and it would have made that whole sequence so much creepier than it actually was.
I just realised as well where I know Josh's mum from.
Oh, I just watched, I was trying to figure out recently, I think she's in Dream Scenario with Nicolas Cage, was in the cinema recently, and we're trying to figure out who his wife was, and I think it's from... Oh, no, I'm thinking of a completely different thing. I am mixing this up with a TV show I watched yesterday. Forget what I just said. I do apologize.
Do you want me to finish my sentence?
Oh, absolutely.
She's the mum in Last Action Hero.
Jesus Christ. I can hardly remember that.
Yes, she's the mum in Last Action Hero, which we're going to cover on his podcast.
Yeah, we are going to cover that for sure. That'll actually be fun to go back to. Yeah. I think it'll probably be a lot better than we remember. And I'm just trying to talk my way out of the fact that I was talking absolute cobblers just a few seconds ago.
I mean, to be fair, you talk so much, sometimes you are just going to talk shit.
Oh, so... yeah, eventually. But that's the thing, if I talk long enough and quickly enough, people are like, I can't even remember what he said.
Fucking John Lovitz is in this film.
Yeah, supposedly he was supposed to be in it more, but he was quite unwell and they cut down his role, and I think he was quite happy about it. And so, of course, this movie turned into a massive hit.
And they cut down his role to basically sex pest.
Yeah.
He was... You want to talk about sexual... He's going on about that woman in the red, the perks. All you got to do is say hello to that woman and she'll basically fuck you. And then you got him in that weird ballroom corporate event dancing, and he is fondling some woman who doesn't want it.
The thing is, it's an interesting one when you see this, because you're like, oh, is that just what the 80s are like? It's like, yes, but just to be clear, men haven't changed. Most men, or a lot of men, are absolute slime balls. It's just they can't get away with it anymore. Yeah. That's the only difference. They've just been, it's like every man has suddenly grown a conscience. A lot of guys are absolute sleazeballs. Every office has a John Lovitz, without question. Yep. They just can't act upon the filth anymore. That's all that is. But yes, he is an absolutely horrendous character, but quite memorable because it's John Lovitz.
I wonder, right? He said as well he'd been there 5 years. And he met this guy who, after, a week, is now vice president of sales or wherever it is. He was. Oh, I bet John Lovitz is fucking pissed off.
Well, yeah. We see how upset Paul is, but we never see how upset John Lovitz is. But I don't think he's that, committed to the job, is he? Like, the first thing he says something pretty unpleasant about women and then tells them to slow down on his first day because he's going to make everyone else look bad. He's not the only bad character, though. I would argue that I know towards the end he's trying to do the right thing. But is Billy a bad friend? Because, right, this all starts because Billy tells Josh to try and hit on a girl who's clearly 3 years older than him and keeps feeding him the same bullshit that Josh has got a chance with this girl. Any decent friend worth his salt would tell Josh, you haven't got a fucking chance. She's miles out your league. Beyond the fact that she's a foot taller and 3 years older than you, it's not fucking happening.
Is she 3 years older than him? I didn't catch her.
She must be. You saw a boyfriend. A boyfriend was basically a man. So I was just like, at first I thought, are they like the same age, but he's just short and she's tall. But then when you see her with a boyfriend, I was like, no, she must be at least.
I don't know.
You're
thinking of that. You're thinking of that as a 40-year-old man now. Think about it back then. A girl you like smiles at you and says hello.
Oh, no, I get why Josh thinks he's got a chance.
Yeah.
Because every guy has done that, where any girl talks to you and you're like, I think she wants to fuck you.
Yeah, so
every guy has had that.
I don't think Billy's bad. Just to be fair, I've never liked Jared Rushton's characters because he's a prick in Honey, I Shrunk the Kid.
I love how you're like, oh, we're going to do all his movies, but he is a prick.
He's a prick in that. He's a prick in Pet Sematary too. He's an absolute shitebag in that. But in this, I don't think he is. I think he's just trying to live vicariously through his friend.
See, I think any decent friend would step in and say, dude, you need to settle down. I get why you like her. She's not going to go out with you. Like, she's just so... I just think... I feel like I would have stepped in. One of my friends was talking that kind of job. I'm like, dude, man, listen, she's hot. I get it, but she's much older than you. She's much taller than you, which is weird. And it's not going to happen. But then I guess you don't get a movie.
After Josh becomes a man... He's gone out of his way to try and help him. He's like, you can't stay in here.
Admittedly, I am being facetious because he is great for the rest of the film. I just think this film is predicated and built upon Billy not doing what a good friend should do, and that is step in and just say, when your friends buy something terrible, like, they show up and they're wearing like a really bad jumper or like leather trousers. Again, one of my friends, he knows what I'm talking about, shows up with that. And you have to tell them, you can't tiptoe around. You have to be like, dude, we are going to take the piss until you take those off and never wear them again.
But I think
you're being good friends.
That's the difference between a good friend and a best friend. A good friend may tell you, dude, you look horrible. A best friend will say, mate, wear them all the time. I think you look amazing, just to take the piss.
Oh, no. See, I think a best friend, you really have to... Like there is a level. You can have
good friends and best friends. Liam, always wear that T-shirt. It looks awesome on you, mate.
Oh, God bless you. Honestly, I think a best friend needs to step in on those moments. You need to step in and say, listen, you can't be wearing those goddamn leather pants. It's just not for you. You're not Tom Jones. I don't know what you're thinking. They've got to go.
You are so telling me off pod who the leather pants... shitebag who ditches his friends for a girl is.
He's going to be so upset when he listens to this. Anyway, and he's not a shitebag. He's absolutely adorable, but he did go through a phase, but it's fine. Anyway, have we covered the film? I think we've covered the film pretty much.
Oh, the only other thing I wanted to mention was from that 70s show, Eric Foreman's mum was the secretary.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Good shout. And also, Billy's layup did stink at the start of the film. But so did the other kids. The other kids broke down down the other end of the court. They went for a layup. He missed by miles. Billy is open to a ludicrous level. I'm not sure what kind of basketball they're playing. And yes, he is terrible. I'm not sure he deserves to have all those balls thrown at him. And also
he was
Billy
right
is setting him. Yeah. Well, he shouldn't have been. He had the whole court to work with. But Billy is the kind of kid who clearly gets abducted and killed. A grown man breaks into the school, corners him, and sings a song. He's like, oh, yeah, that's the song. You must be my friend who's turned into a 30-year-old man. Dude is getting murdered for sure.
That song as well made absolutely no sense.
It didn't, and I was thinking, is it quite cringy? But then after the film finished, I'm still kind of singing it in my head. So I get it.
But the same lyric over and over, shimmy, shimmy, Cocoa Pop.
Yeah. I don't know the rest of it, so I'm just kind of humming it.
All I know is shimmy, shimmy, Cocoa Pop, shimmy, shimmy, rye. Suck me in the stomach 3 more times. That's the best thing.
You know more than me. All right, favourite scene? Do you want to go first?
No, you go first.
Well, the thing is, there are a bunch of very obvious ones. I mentioned the trampoline sequence, the piano sequence, and even though it's upsetting rather than fun, but this is the first night in the hotel. But for me, it's the getting paid montage because I can totally relate to it. When they go and buy like a bunch of like sports merchandise, they go to the baseball, they buy a bunch of sweets. I'm like, oh yeah, I get every single part of that. They tick all the boxes.
Yeah,
it's not quite Brewster's Millions because they have a limited amount of money and not going out and buy cars. It's very much the stuff you wish you could buy as a kid. So it makes it so much more relatable. So I'm going to go for the getting paid montage at the start of the film.
It's the toy shop for me.
Yeah.
Meeting Macmillan, just again, we've said it before, childlike wonder.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way Macmillan sees this guy who's working for him, and he's a data processor, or however they say it, a data processor, how we should say it. And it feels so sweet and innocent, and just this guy is going to take him under his wing because there's something special about this young man.
Yeah.
So,
and you are talking about one of the most iconic sequences of the 80s cinema. I think if you were doing a montage of 80s movies, you're going to have the piano sequence in there, 100%. In terms of loves, number one, Tom Hanks, unsurprisingly. Number two, the tone is perfectly pitched. Again, something that had to be gotten spot on for this movie to work, and it absolutely does. And number three, I think is a brilliant concept. I know it's been done in a bunch of films, especially around that time, but the whole Monday magic lamp thing, there's even a hint of, the aforementioned monkey paw to it. And towards the end, I know, for a lot of this film, the idea is, all these grown-ups who have forgotten what it's like to be a kid. But by the end of the film, there really is that concept of don't wish away your youth. That's what he starts missing. It's like he suddenly becomes an adult and starts losing what makes being a kid so magical. And that's what makes him turn the corner and go, I've got to become a kid again. So even though it's not the message for most of the film, I like by the end, the real core message of the film is don't wish away your youth, enjoy it while it lasts. And I'm going to stick in number 4, Elizabeth Perkins's transformation from like corporate suck-up, no pun intended there, to kind of lovable character, and a whole relationship with Josh, I actually think feels really natural. And I think she is, while obviously Tom Hanks steals the show, I think she's equally brilliant in many
Does
respects.
she go back to being a corporate suck-up, or does she keep
No. I think she can work in a company.
Technically she's in jail, but other than that.
Well, I think a lot of people start asking, what the hell happened to Josh?
Yeah.
And does Paul just take the role again? Does it go back? Because you can feel like obviously the culture within the company is changing because of Josh. But with Josh disappearing, I feel like it's down to Susan to retain that sense of corporate culture and not let it go backwards to where Paul wants it to be. So it turns into a bit of a battleground situation between Susan and Paul, I think.
How long as well does it take to do background checks? Because he's put his name as Josh Baskin. Again, he hasn't changed his name. And his social security number doesn't exist. It's a locker combination with 19 on the end.
100%. Again, it's one of those things. If you start thinking about it, it should fall to pieces. Like he should work there for 2 days, and then they do a check and be like, "Wait a minute, none of this adds up." Also, Josh, like, you sure that you haven't, abducted that child?
Yeah.
Yeah. The police show up within a couple of days.
For me, Tom Hanks, number one. I think he's great in this. Jared Rushton as Billy, I think is great. He's being a good friend. I don't care what you say. He's being a very
no. Just be clear. He is. I just think at the start he has his moment when he has the opportunity to tell him the right thing, that he's punching above his weight and he should just leave well alone. But for the rest of the film, he is admittedly an absolutely spot on friend.
Yeah, he's definitely a star. And I like. What was her name? Did you say? Sorry, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Perkins.
Elizabeth Perkins.
I think playing Susan.
Susan. I think she's great in this.
Mm-hmm.
To start off with being, as we've already said, that corporate douchebag kind of character, to sleeping away to the top, to regaining some innocence and some. I've said it 900 times already.
She is like the kind of. Yeah. The physical manifestation of being beaten down by growing up, forgetting what it means to be young, blah, blah, blah. And it like that transformation of hers doesn't feel too, cumbersome, or, it's like it slowly builds up. You're like, yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah. Right. Hates
the classic arcade machines left outside. It's unforgivable in this film.
I knew I had that written down. I knew that would upset you.
I mean, if I could handpick 2 arcade machines, I might legitimately go for the original Pac-Man and Outrun games, and they're both outside. One's at the beach, one's sitting outside when they're like looking for the Zoltar machine, and one's just sitting outside. like outside absolutely wrecks arcade machines, and to see two classics like that being absolutely torn to pieces by Mother Nature is very upsetting. So that's one. Number two, sweet movie ruined by modern sensibilities. I mentioned the fact that I think a lot of people, if you don't watch the film and you just think about like the core concept, it can get pretty disturbing pretty quickly. And I thought it was going to be that because it's the way people talk about it now. But if you go back and watch it, it's just not the case. There's a reason nobody raised an eyebrow for like 25 years. It's because it never felt weird. It didn't feel weird to us growing up. It didn't feel weird to them making it. But now, of course, with everything going on, we have to make everything a little bit gross. So
it is super creepy now.
Again, if you overthink it, it is. But when you watch it, I stand by the fact that it's a very sweet movie. And I mentioned it earlier, as great as Tom Hanks is, sometimes he acts more insane than childlike. It's a similar, like there's a cognitive dissonance to some of his actions. Like it really happened with the second Shazam movie, where the kid was a little bit older, and you see him as a kid and he's acting pretty level-headed, and then he becomes Shazam and he's acting like a 7-year-old moron, and you're like, well, there's no correlation between the two characters. This film doesn't have that problem for the most part. There's just one or two sequences when it inches over us, like, is he 13 or is he 6? It gets a bit weird, but it's a minor criticism of an otherwise fantastic performance.
For me, Paul, John Hurd in this film, he's a dick, and I don't like him at all.
But he's good at being a dick.
He is good at being a dick. I wonder if this is what he was doing before he became Macaulay Culkin's dad, or are we sticking with the fact he was a gangster?
Oh, he's definitely a gangster.
He's
definitely a gangster in Home Alone. Dude, as good as this job was, and obviously it paid for like a really nice apartment in central Manhattan, I don't think it paid for that house in Chicago. And what was it, like 15 first-class tickets to Paris? Yeah, but that guy was such a gangster.
I mean, secondly, I've got to say the idiotic things of Tom Hanks. Like when he's in the limo, being a child, touching all the buttons, I get it. But then
pushes it a bit. That's one of the sequences where it goes a little bit far, I think.
Well, I don't know. Pushing the buttons, I get it. As a kid, you would do that. I still do that, and I was a 40-year-old man. Jumping outside of the window, I get all that. But then, I mean, you're not wearing a white tuxedo to a party. I don't care how old you are.
Absolutely.
That kind of just becomes like a Pee Wee Herman-esque kind of thing.
It does. The only thing I will say, it is easy to forget now with the internet and all these other things, just how actually, I was going to use the term innocent, but just completely naive we were when we were, not everyone maybe, but I and my friends were when we were 13. When I was 13, and I remember I always have this very vivid memory. I was in high school with my friend and we're walking through the corridor, and these two older kids, they must have been like 14, 15. It's that weird age where a kid who's a year older feels like so much older than you. He came up to us and he said, so fucking gross. He's like, do you guys masturbate with your dads? And we both looked at him and went, what? And the joke, we didn't know what that meant. I was in high school, and he said, "Do you masturbate with your dad?" And I didn't know what that meant at 13. And neither did my friends. We just went, well, it just felt safer to say no, but we didn't know. We were just like, well, that sounds like it's probably gross. But we didn't know what it meant. But without the internet and stuff, especially from a sexual perspective, we were so utterly clueless at like 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff seems ridiculous now, but I think that level of naivety was much more prevalent in 13-year-olds back in the late 80s and early 90s.
Well, I'm going to say my third one is definitely the sexual undertones. My third hate.
I get it. Yeah. Well, that's similar to what I said. Like, if you stop and think about it, it can get gross real quick.
And you can't not but think about it.
Well, in fairness, we are doing it. But honestly, I was watching this, and as a podcast, I was like, oh, God, I'm going to tear this film to pieces. There was like a 20, 30-minute spell when I didn't make a single note because I was just enraptured by the movie again, because it is fundamentally just a very good movie.
Oh, I made notes.
But yes, as soon as I stop and you force yourself to think about it, you're like, oh God, that is a 13-year-old kid with a woman. But I think this film does a great job of kind of hiding the creepiness. But to your point, the creepiness still is there.
Yeah.
Do you have any alternative titles for this film?
Oh boy, do we.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Maybe a bunch of alternative titles built on like more specific wishes. It was like, right, because obviously the whole concept of the film is built around the fact that he's too short to go on a ride. And I'm sure I've mentioned it before, but I've had the other issue where I couldn't go on a ride in Japan at Disney World because I'm too tall. So it was like, if I'd run into a Zoltar machine, my wish would have been, I wish I was 3 inches shorter. It's it's not quite as catchy a title. I don't think it's as interesting a film. I'm not sure how you make it, an hour and 45-minute film about a 6'7" man who suddenly becomes 6'4". It's just not that. I get to go on the roller coaster. So pretty much my life is exactly the same because I'm still really tall. I'm just not quite as tall as I was.
So your wish is to be my height.
Yeah, I wish I was Rob's height.
Yeah,
like that would be the title of the film. And it's just me going on a roller coaster in Japan and going, that's quite nice. And somebody, when I get back home to the UK, goes, God, you look a bit shorter. But then nobody really mentions it again. And that's the end of the film.
Yeah. So in Argentina, it's called I'd Like to Be Great.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like a dodgy sports movie.
Yeah. Canada, Little Man.
Okay, they've gone the opposite way, but yeah, it still works.
Finland, Big Overnight.
I mean, yeah, a little on the nose, but sure, yeah.
Hungary.
Hungary. Oh, see, you're already laughing. Hungary often come up with the goods when it comes to alternative titles.
Help! I grew up.
I actually quite like that.
Lithuania, Large.
I mean, is large that different from big? I don't think it is. I wish I was large. Yeah, same thing.
Although it gives different connotations, I think, if the film is called Large.
Yeah, from that perspective. From a wish perspective, I think large is just as vague as big. But yeah, large is pretty suspect.
Netherlands, If Only I Were Big.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yep. Taiwan, Fly Into the Future.
No. Okay, sure. Why not Thailand?
Yeah.
Or Taiwan, sorry. I can't remember what you said.
Ukraine, Great.
That's terrible.
Vietnam, Become an Adult.
Yeah, okay, sure. I don't think it kind of, conveys the sense of fun that this film, is trying to capture, but sure.
Uzbekistan. Floor.
Floor. Just floor. Okay, floor it is, Uzbekistan.
Not floor as in FLAW, which may link FLOOR.
Oh, I thought. Wait. So it is floor as in the floor.
The floor.
Yeah. That's how I heard it. In fairness, not a floor as in the floor. By the way, neither really make any. Floor makes more sense. As in his mind, his flaw is that he's not big enough. The floor. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I mean, he falls off his bed onto the floor. There's a lot of people walking on the floor in this film, but other than that, I just like sure what they're going for.
The guy titling in Uzbekistan is like, do you know what links this film? They're all on a floor.
Yeah. Everyone's on the floor. That is the one overriding link in this film. Crazy.
Oh my god.
Is that all of them?
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have any facts?
I do. So, according to Robert Loggia, on the day they filmed the famous walking piano scene...
You will not say Robert Loggia, will you?
Nope.
You just refuse.
Nope. Walking piano scene at FAO Schwartz. He and Tom Hanks noticed the doubles dressed like them were on hand, just in case they could not do the dance moves correctly. It became their goal to do the entire number without the aid of the doubles. They succeeded.
Yeah, they nailed it. It's really good.
Yep. We've mentioned this briefly. To give Tom Hanks an idea of how a 13-year-old would behave, director Penny Marshall filmed each grown-up scene with David Moscow playing Hanks's part, and then Hanks copied Moscow's behaviour. Hanks would go on to do something similar for Forrest Gump, when he would spend time with Michael Connor Humphreys and imitate his southern accent to prepare for the part.
Cool. Mission accomplished.
Oh my God. Tom Hanks was the first choice for the role of Josh Baskin, but was unavailable due to scheduling conflicts with Dragnet and Punchline. Mm-hmm. Robert De Niro was then offered it, and the writers began to retool the script for a more urban 13-year-old. But he was rejected because his $6 million salary was too high, or his demand was too high.
Thank
Hanks then
God.
became more available and accepted it for $2 million. David Moscow originally auditioned not for young Josh, but for Billy, since he didn't look like De Niro. When Hanks was given the role, Moscow was brought back into audition for Josh.
This would have been such a different
Niro!
film with De Niro. It just would, like, the idea of De Niro catching that. I mean, he's one of the greatest actors we've ever had, but I just can't see him in this role at all.
How
As
many
great as he
people?
is.
How many people is he murdering?
Yeah, it just wouldn't work. And I get it. Like, at this time in his career, he's trying to do it, kind of broaden his horizons, do a bit more comedy and stuff. And he's got comedy to a certain extent in his locker, just not this.
Tom Hanks improvised a scene where he eats the baby corn as if it were a normal-sized corn on the cob.
Ah, awesome.
What else have we got here? Robert Legia's character is based on then FAO Schwartz CEO Peter Harris.
Now you're just being a dick.
The character is a youthful, albeit goofy retailer, which is true to Harris's own personality.
Ah, that's cool.
When Penny Marshall got the script, no studio was interested in doing that movie. It was only when Robert De Niro announced he wanted the role of Josh Baskin that people wanted to do it.
Well, yeah, the other issue would have been, like, there were just so many films of the same ilk being, like, it's so bizarre that in just, like, year period, there were just 5 of them. Just all these, like, we do go through these phases where you get similar movies and it's just a vibe or whatever where everyone's making the same film, but not to the extent where you're getting 5 at the same time. So you can see why a lot of people are like, we're not going to do this with, like, big actors. And obviously, it would have cost more. When you're talking about De Niro, Tom Hanks, I know Tom Hanks did it for cheaper, but you don't immediately think of the concept of this film and think, oh yeah, let's put some real money behind it. But glad they did.
Yep. Tom Hanks was 31 and Elizabeth Perkins was 28 during filming.
Mm-hmm.
So he was older than her when they fucked. But technically, in the mind, she was
younger. Yeah. Very strange.
Robin Williams considered for the role of Josh Baskin. That might have worked.
That might have worked. 100%. Yeah.
Harrison Ford turned down the role of Josh Baskin.
Jesus Christ. Again, it's not quite as egregious as Robert De Niro, but it's not far off. It's much closer to the Robert De Niro end of that scale for sure.
Dennis Quaid told Larry King that he turned down the role of Josh Baskin because he wanted to do Everybody's All-American.
Dennis Quaid's an interesting one. I still don't see it.
Steve Guttenberg was considered for the role, but he turned it down as he was busy shooting 3 Men and a Baby.
He totally looks like, you wouldn't even have to change, like, the kid actor or anything. He kind of looks both like Tom Hanks and young Josh. So yeah.
Also, imagine 3 Men and a Baby wasn't a film. And let me say that sentence again. Steve Guttenberg was considered for the role of Josh Baskin, but he turned it down as he was busy shooting 3 Men and a Baby.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to make sure you get the comma in the right place there, don't you?
Yeah.
It's like when you've got to have, like, a hyphen with certain things, or it suddenly sounds rude rather than funny, etc., etc. Yeah.
Bill Murray.
Just a reminder: punctuation is important, kids.
Bill Murray was considered for the role of Josh Baskin, but he chose to do Scrooge instead. I think that's a good choice.
Yeah, Bill Murray was a little bit more zany back then, so maybe he could have pulled it off. But yeah.
Oh, we mentioned Foreman's mum. This was Deborah Jo Rupp. I will give her a credit. Her name was Deborah Jo Rupp. This was a film debut.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And then last but not least, Albert Brooks turned down the role of Josh Baskin.
Yeah, quite bizarre. Supposedly, I've actually got one more name. At one point, they were talking about Gary Busey, which is an incredibly... If you're on about this film being disturbing now, imagine this movie with Gary Busey. Yes, that is a weird film.
I cannot have any picture Gary Busey anymore without the buttered sausage thing.
Oh, Jesus Christ, yeah. It's strange because he was kind of like almost leading man, kind of handsome for a little bit, and he went for, but yeah, I can't unsee what he's become now. There's just, I just think of the teeth, the smile, the madness, just Gary Busey. So no, I can't.
Buttered sausage.
Oh, buttered sausage. There you go. In terms of legacy, some of this we've already covered. The fact that it's not shown on TV anymore gets a bit of an unfair bad rap. We mentioned the fact that it's never getting remade, and despite the fact, Deborah Winger wanted to have a gender swap back in 1988. Thankfully,
technically, it was remade, wasn't it?
Was it?
Yeah. Indian language, Indian ones. Nani and Ayo Wish Kareen were.
Oh, well, as you know, anything goes in India, so that's absolutely
two
fine.
Bollywood releases.
We mentioned second movie as a director and first woman to direct a movie that made over 100 million. So not bad for a second movie. I would say this was the peak of Tom Hanks part one. The idea of him as a comedic leading man, which very much, as I said, ended in 1993, where I know it's still a bit of a comedy, but he turned into a traditional leading man from 93 onwards. So I think it's like there's the pre-93 Tom Hanks and then post-93 Tom Hanks. And in terms of pre-93 Tom Hanks, I think this is probably his pinnacle, which is backed up by the huge box office and the fact that he was up for a Best Actor nomination at the Oscars. So I don't think that's too egregious to say. And it wasn't just a Best Actor nomination they got for this film either. It was also the screenplay was up for. It didn't win, but it was up for an Oscar for Best Screenplay, which, again, looking back and revisiting this film, doesn't feel like a surprise because it is, as I said, for this film to be so good, all the individual aspects have to be brilliant. And it's what elevates it. Like, this could be a straight to DVD, totally whatever film, but because you've got the director, the writing, the score, the actors involved, it's just so much better than it has any right to be.
Yeah.
In terms of making a change, this is the section where
sorry. So, some more legacy stuff. Did you,
go
mention the musical?
I did not.
There's a Broadway musical.
I had no idea. I must have missed that.
It started in 1996. The last one was in the West End in 2019. So,
obviously,
still going for a while. Yeah,
no pun intended.
And there was attempts to make TV shows. One in 1990, and then another in 2014. Both didn't get off the
ground.
I'm not
sure
but
if this works. I guess they could. Again, I like the idea of the TV show based on the mother's experience of the whole situation.
That's what I mean. I don't think unless the TV, because the TV show has to be finite.
Yeah.
Because you can't just have him going for years trapped. Because the kid, the parents then are just like.
Well, I guess at some point, do you have an episode where they go and explain it, and the mum and the dad really does disappear from this film? It's quite strange. There is a dad, but he totally disappears. Yeah. But he goes back, explains it, and they like half believe him to the point where they just kind of let him get on with his life to a certain extent as a 30-year-old man, and they're just aware of it. Like, it'd be weird. Again, I think another reason why you just don't want to see this TV show. So yeah, I think it's a good thing that it's never got made.
Yeah. Sorry. Making a change?
Yeah. I would just, for my own mental well-being, I'd make it harder for Josh to get a job, an apartment in central New York, because it's far too easy. And I can tell you as an adult, it's not that easy to get a really high-paid job and an amazing apartment in New York in 2023. This is a very, very different movie for many reasons, but that is certainly one of them. And as I mentioned, the dating thing as well. But I'm going to say the job thing is the one that really upsets me.
For me, the joke answer is The Wish. Just say I wish I was taller.
Yeah. Absolutely bang on, yeah.
But the correct answer is get away of the sexual undertones, isn't it?
Does the film work, though, without the romance? It makes sense. Like, if you're going to have a romance, it makes sense that she would be sexually interested, because as far as she's
you can have romance, but you don't have to have the hints that he fucked her. He's a knowledgeable 30. He knows he's 13 years of age.
Yeah, I'm just not sure if it works quite the same way. But I get it. You could totally have the film where there's kind of like a love interest, but he keeps making excuses for them not having sex. But, they really do posit that early in the film. Like, he's a 13-year-old boy, so he wants to have sex. He totally does.
I get it. Yeah, but so, it's still gross and creepy.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. In terms of a video game, I would basically have a graphical text-based adventure in the same style as the fictional video game, The Cavern of the Evil Wizard, which you see in the movie. That's now actually, so it was never a real video game. It was created for this. It's now been turned into a real, albeit very simple, Flash game. So I would basically have the exact same style, like an old kind of Amiga-looking game, or maybe it's even before that, like a BBC, I suppose, a text-based video game where you make the choices and navigate Josh's new life as an adult.
Don't say BBC.
Why not?
This day and age, you can't say BBC without thinking a big black cock.
I think you absolutely can, because of, I don't know, the BBC.
No.
See, I go to the BBC website about 7 times a day. I don't think I've ever gone big black cock.
I think you have. I think you're making it up.
Oh no, I think I will from now on, because you've sown the seed. But anyway, so yeah, I would have a text-based adventure with him dealing with his new life as an adult, dealing with the cops, work, and sexual encounters with Susan, etc. So that would be my video game version of Big.
For me, the only thing I could come up with, it's a Sims game.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. because you're basically a 13-year-old boy or whatever controlling adults in Sims anyway. So
yeah, it's a more involved version of basically what I said. Like I'm basically used the text-based adventure as an excuse to bring up the video game, but you'd already brought it up earlier, which is absolutely fine, by the way. But yeah, Sims is probably the correct answer.
Yep. That's the best I could do for Sims.
In terms of scores and recommendations, for me, 4. Easy. It's a 4-star film, and I would totally recommend it. Despite we've made some jokes about it being a weird, creepy movie. If anything, if anyone went, "Oh, isn't Big a bit creepy now?" I'd recommend that they go back and watch it even more. It's available on Disney Plus to watch, and it's probably a sweeter film than you actually think it is. And it's really well made. It's not just a good concept. Oh, it's Tom Hanks playing a kid. It's a much better film than that. As I mentioned, brilliant direction. It zips along at 1 hour and 45, and as I said, quietly brilliant direction from Penny Marshall, fantastic performances across the board, brilliant screenplay, brilliant score, largely fantastic film. So yes, 4 stars and a recommendation from me.
I would recommend it. It's fun to watch. You still, minus all the creepiness and things that we said, it's still a good watch. Tom Hanks is so good in this film.
Yeah, he's great.
It's 3.5. I will put it. It's a 3.5 for me.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, there are some things that are missing that pushes it, but for me, yeah, I would recommend it. It's a good film. It's a great time to go back and rewatch it. And 3.5. And as you said, it's already on Disney Plus in the UK. So
yeah. For me, it's like like last week when we did Ghostbusters, and I almost said it's like the quintessential 3-star film. For me, this really does feel like the quintessential 4-star movie. It feels so 4-star to me. Like that's not me taking umbrage with you giving this 3.5 star. From my personal perspective, when I watched it, I was like, I didn't even really have to think about it. I was like, man, this film is 4 stars as fuck. But yes, the important part is we both recommend it because it's still a great movie. So yeah, what are we doing next week? Your choice, sir.
Yep, I got a little quiz for you. What do you get if you take a well-known orange soft drink in the UK and combine it with money?
Fanta money.
Or
Fanta.
Think of another orange soft drink, not Fanta. The UK version.
Orangina.
This is hard. I thought
I'm not gonna get it.
Tango and Cash.
Oh, sorry, man.
Tango.
Phantom money. That is so embarrassing that I said Phantom money rather than
Phantom money. Tango and Cash, dude.
I am absolutely calling Tango and Cash from now on Phantom money.
Phantom money.
Or Fanta and money.
We're going to do Tango and Cash next week.
I'm terrible at these quizzes. Jesus Christ, Phantom money, fucking moron. And it wasn't, it really isn't that difficult a riddle. I should have got it, especially the fact that I've seen Tango and Cash so many times.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Probably released around the same, was it 89?
I thought 85, but I could be wrong.
80? Oh, no. It must be later than that. I'm thinking Tango and Cash was very late 80s. Like
89,
closer
you're
to...
right. No, you're right, yeah.
89.
Cobra was 86, so...
Okay. So that's almost like a non-point.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Rocky 5 was 1985.
It's like Phantom money.
Yeah. Oh, did you... How Green Was Your Valley was released in 1935. Oh, yeah, cheers for that, Benny. That's really insightful. But anyway, to get back to the point, Tango Cash is a fucking amazing choice. And actually, similar to Big, it's almost amazing that it's taken us this long. Because this was one of the big movies when I was younger, Tango Cash. We both love Sylvester Stallone. We both love Kurt Russell. We both love what is a really silly... This is a silly-ass film.
I'm guessing we both enjoyed Terry Hatcher on screen.
Oh, absolutely. And remember earlier I was talking about the importance of hyphens? There you go. A silly-ass film. You need the hyphen between silly and ass, otherwise you get a silly-ass film. And suddenly you're like, is this like a funny porn? Anyway, sorry. Absolutely needless.
Put that next to a BBC film and you're
I'm sure when people listen to this podcast, I remember when Liam did the callback to the punctuation. No, we fucking don't. We remember when he said Fanta and money, the idiot. Yes, do join us for Tango and Cash next week. Do you have anything else to add before we wrap this up?
No, not today, mate. I'm all good.
Cool. I've been Liam. This has been Rob. You've been listening to Hey You Guys podcast, and we will see you next week for 1989's Tango and Cash. Thanks for listening, guys. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Fucking Phantom money.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.